Hello, I'm emiestarxx and welcome to my channel. You can also follow me on my other socials, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And now, on to the video. Over the years, we have seen a steady rise of representation of POC characters throughout several media. I can guarantee you today that the representation that we are getting now is so much more better than what we got 20 years ago. But I think the question lingering deep in our minds is, why does representation matter? Why does seeing characters that look like us, with cultures like ours, with fashion like ours, on the big screen, on words, on comic book strips matter? The question can be interpreted differently if pondered by a racist, but from someone who is genuinely curious and seeking genuine answers, it gives us a lot to ponder. Why does it matter?
Is that not enough to sate your bloodlust?
Because Shang-Chi told an engaging story, steeped in an Asian culture but framed in modern-day America. Because it told the story of Americans that aren't yet mainstream. Because the Asian culture of this story wasn't a Western civilization, but an Eastern one. These facts felt relevant and different to me, but it was all still swirling in my mind. I'm so sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. And to be honest, it was all swirling in my mind too. Beyond being surprised, baffled, elated to see you read a character of my race, why else did it matter? And then she said something that caught my attention. But in a world where there isn't as much mainstream education and exposure to diverse ethnicities that make up America, a single story can run the risk of becoming the stereotype that flattens a whole ethnicity into a singular experience. It was like a light bulb just flicked in my head. The first important was that it eliminated stereotypes and helped everyone understand that ethnicities, race, culture, etc. was very important. This whole statement encapsulated exactly what I'll be reviewing first: stereotypes, particularly eliminating stereotypes. For me, representation boosts one's sense of belonging. Think of the media as council seats and the characters representatives. You don't want the world to be giving flat and oversimplified stories of your people. You want proper quality representation that gives your ethnicity multiple aspects so that others don't rely on stereotypes. This is especially important when you realize that these stereotypes are used to justify systemic inequality, subdue racial groups to harmful stereotypes or harmful tropes, and feed real world prejudice. This, in general, creates a collective bias that strips not just these characters of their humanity, but actual people of color as well.
But what do these stereotypes do to people of color on a personal level?
In the first draft of the prequel of the seriology I'm working on currently, that's Heavenly Meeting of the Silent, I noticed none of my characters had a single lick of melanin. They were all white. And whenever I think about that, I'm embarrassed because of the realization that came to me as I became much, much older. The problem wasn't that all my characters were white, but that the uncomfortable truth and reality was that I wasn't comfortable with them being anything but white. Whiteness was the default. So I was ashamed to include aspects of my Nigerian culture, to include things like our dialect, pidgin, the street foods like akara and suya, my Igbo tribe's fashion, the mythology. Heck, my own skin color didn't even scratch my brain in the first draft. The relegation of my own identity as an Igbo girl, Nigerian, African, a black woman left me with an uneasy revelation. My self-esteem was shattered. This conclusion led me to start learning about my culture, my blackness, if you will, from the source and not from wonky rubbish that some shows fed to children at an early age. But wait, what about positive stereotypes. All Asians are good at math, or the black women can endure anything type of harmless tropes. Yes, is that serious? Did you know, in an essay written for Sports Illustrated by Henry Louis Gates, he gave stats in his article that revealed shocking data at this time. There were 1,200 black professional athletes in all US sports, 12 times more black lawyers than black athletes. There were 20 times more black dentists than black athletes, and there were 15 times more black doctors than black athletes. Side note, this was around 1991 BTW, and it was titled Delusions of Grandeur if you want to read up on that. But what am I getting at? Sport media doesn't explicitly say that black athletes dominate sports, but it hints at it, even though the stats at the time proves otherwise. This is one of the many cartoonish depictions of black people, and in its own way, very disparaging. It promotes shared ignorance and gives a limited frame of reference for those who genuinely want to know about black people. You might say, oh, but it is the fault of the people consuming that media for not knowing, I don't know, common knowledge that not all black people are good at sports. But the fault doesn't just lie on them, it also lies on the people presenting it. Positive stereotypes gathers a collective idea for those who consume it to view and mistakenly believe they have encountered the truth about a racial group. It promotes shared ignorance and gives limited frame of reference. But what else does it do? Well, I'm done with stereotypes for now. We'll be going to another section, which I call credits where credits are due. In Chimamanda Ngozi's TED Talk titled The Dangers of a Single Story, she says, the consequences of a single story is this. It robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. You know what else the lack of representation robs? It robs marginalized groups of their cultures, their music, their architecture, their language, their entertainment, without giving credit to who credit is due. Another quote from a TED Talk stuck with me. In Kanye Kowalski's TED Talk titled The Peace of Cultural Appropriation, he says, I feel like cancel culture and cultural appropriation have been strangely put together. And as a result, I find this very dangerous. To be honest, I agree with him. Recently in social media, there's an increasing stride in this divisiveness and subjective dialogue. Nobody can genuinely learn again without being asked down or accused of bigotry that they genuinely do not inhabit within their subconscious, especially on Twitter, but I digress. So, cultural appropriation, not to be confused with cultural appreciation. I feel like a lot of people interchangeably confuse these, especially when it's the topic of celebrities. But there is one anime that does a really good job with the latter, and that is Gachiakuta. This is Gachiakita. It became popular and mainstream for a lot of reasons. Its animation, the manga's art style. I also want to highlight two things, or maybe three, I don't know, that really kicked into gear for this popularity. AAV, POC characters, and graphic art. People gravitated towards the AAV because a lot of black people gravitated towards it. A lot of the voice actors, the black voice actors, did a good job at delivering the lines. I'm looking at you, Zeno Robinson.
I just told you who I am. It's your boy, Jabba!
The voice actors did such a spectacular job at delivering their lines, and clearly you can tell that the fandom appreciated it. There's a whole trend going on right now in this timeline where a whole bunch of Jabba cosplayers go for a real cosplayer and go, short head, let's just start with steroids. I don't know how to say it, I didn't memorize it, but yeah, this type of representation is the theme of joy. It gets people together, groups them together, gets them to talk about things that doesn't include one racial group. It's also worthy to note that Gachiagata is written by Kei Urana, a mangaka who also worked alongside another mangaka's work, or one of my favorite works actually. It's called Soul Eater. I think the mangaka is Atoshi Okubo. So the manga is one of the very few collections of Japanese graphic novels that don't display people of color as caricatures. Which Has to Tell You is also known for its diverse cast and amazing plot and power system. You should definitely watch the anime and read the manga. It's really worth it. Now, obviously, representation shouldn't be the only reason you watch something and immediately give it 5 stars. I mean, if the show is trash, it's trash. However, a good story with good representation, chef's kiss. And now, onto the last criteria, which is graffiti. A lot of people don't know this, but graffiti is actually closely related to black culture. You know, the 1970s New York City hip hop movement. This is not to say that it is owned by black people and whatnot. More like it's incorporated and it's since started out as, because it's like, started out as street art. But to sum it up, clearly Japan engages with outside media. I mean, if you know what gyarus are, that's more than clear. And not just Japan, but Asia as a whole. I'm looking at you, K-pop fans, because K-pop is heavily inspired by black culture and music. But we're not doing that today. Maybe another video. What we are, however, doing is this. I was baffled, to say the least. They couldn't find any Blasian actors or actresses. Say they couldn't. Why did they have to get their skin dark or brown or have dada locks? I'm trying my best not to call them, Moving on. The dada or locks is a symbol of spirituality, strength, resistance. I know somebody in the comments, that's if there's going to be any, is going to be like, oh, but it's not that serious. And to that I say, can you raise the rising sun flag in China? Well, Chinese people appreciate you mimicking or doing fox eye. And the derogatory word for it is actually called slant eye, but you get what I'm saying. Will any Asian appreciate you trying to mock their accent? And so on and so on. What I'm basically trying to get at here is that you can apply the same logic to what happened in this stage play. Historical context. A lot of people, especially black people, were not okay. They were upset by this because of historical context. We all know, or if you didn't know, painting your skin to look brown or darker than it originally is blackface. Blackface has always been known to be racist and controversial. So for people to go online on a rapade and say that we're overreacting or being oversensitive is not doing us justice and not being fair at all. Whatever the case, elements of a culture or identity of members of marginalized groups, races have been used as costume and mockery, and it's still prevalent in today's society. What am I trying to get at here? People of color deserve not just the spotlight, but credit where credit is due and respect. If the story has elements of another culture, but not a being of that culture's race driving the plot or narrative, I think it would do well to get that race attribution or acknowledgements. Thanking consultants, writing acknowledgements in the acknowledgements section, and naming sources goes a long way. Now, things like food, fashion, that's if the fashion is not tied to specific historic and sacred ceremonies, or folktales are generally accepted if done respectfully and accurately. The whole idea of this video was actually to air out how much I've grown in understanding representation as a whole. So I've turned it into a pseudo essay / yap session. I don't know. I would have loved to talk about more, but editing this video was crazy. It's not even that good, I know. My data is literally running. My laptop and phone is overheating, and I'm currently brain dead from staying 2 days without sleeping. So it would be really amazing if you guys liked, subscribed, shared, and commented. Oh yes, comments. I would especially love constructive criticism. Any aspects on any aspect of my video. So if you haven't, please follow me on all my socials. I will put them here again. And with that, thank you very much for watching and bye. And I'll see you in the next one.